wij moeten een plaatje dragen.
Om nog een uur in de cabine te zitten. Dank u. Ik zal het...
Jullie hebben zo'n dingetje.
Maar ja, ze hebben gezegd dat ik... Ja,
Ja, maar
maar
nu
dat
juist
gaat niet
gekregen.
helpen.
Smakelijk.
Duits naar Engels.
Voor een, ja, maar het is voor een klant. En wij waren oorspronkelijk meer een Franse cabine. En door de andere cabine, een beetje door vriendjes politiek, dus ik was daar niet zo blij over, zijn we een Engelse cabine geworden. En ik zei, allee, tant pis, ik ga dat proberen, hè, vanuit het Duits. Want alleen relais, het is niet altijd... ik vind dat niet leuk. En het zijn ook... Maar dat gaat over politiek dan, maar nee. Dus je moet ook wel goed oppassen op wat je zegt.
Wel, ja, tegen onderwerp is standaard.
Ja, dat is een Europese politieke partij, dus ja. En wat ik super vind, en dat gebeurt elk jaar, je hebt altijd een van die gasten die in zijn taal, een minderheidstaal, begint te spreken. En je hebt, dus aan de grens met Duitsland heb je soms nogal rare talen die inderdaad op Duits lijken.
Zo met Luxemburgs en zo.
Ja, en dan kijken ze naar mij. Ik doe mijn best, man. En dan zegt hij, kan ik zeggen, et maintenant je vais passer à l'allemand. Ik kan niet tegen de collega's zeggen, bon, c'était pas la peine de me regarder comme ça, il ne parlait donc pas allemand. Ja, ik heb ook een probleem met Luxemburg, want een van die dialecten begrijp ik toch.
Maar Oostenrijks kan ook moeilijk zijn, hè?
Ja, maar dat kan, voor mij is dat gemakkelijker dan het noorden. Dus tja, dat is een kwestie van gewoonte in feite. Het is hun redenering die ik zo moeilijk vind van die Oostenrijkers. Soms dan denk ik, ja, begrijpen wel uw woorden, maar ja, wat is de bedoeling van wat hij nu aan het vertellen is? En soms heb je inderdaad een Duitser die gaat zeggen, ja oké, maar en dan... Dat ben ik altijd zeer blij. Zeer, want ik denk, anders gaat die Franstalige denken dat ik geen Duits kan, en het is mijn schuld niet, het is die meneer die onduidelijk is.
Ik moest deze week een stuk Oostenrijkse poëzie uit het begin van de vorige eeuw. Ja, ik had mij daar serieus aan mispakt. Het was voor Beaux-Arts. Ik vertaal redelijk veel voor Beaux-Arts via een vertaalbureau die mij die opdrachten geeft. Dus dan is er een opera of ik weet niet wat precies was. Dan worden er dus nu in dit geval Duitse liederen gezongen, maar de tekst wordt daarboven geprojecteerd.
Ah, ik ken dat, ja, tuurlijk.
Ja, hè, zoals dat in de opera gebruikelijk is.
Ja.
En die opdracht kwam binnen, ik had
en
dat
zorg jij
gezien.
voor die vertaling? Ik zal er gaan denken.
Ja, maar niet altijd, hè, niet altijd. Maar nu was het toch zo moeilijk. Ik had een opdracht aanvaard, was binnengekomen, ik had dat diagonaal gelezen, dacht oké, dat tarief, die deadline, haalbaar. En toen begon ik daaraan. Ik heb al zitten zweten. Oh, jongens, toch?
Oh, maar ik heb dat gehad bijna 2 jaar geleden. Door het bureau van ons in de buurt daarvan te zeggen, wil je 2 arresten vertalen van Duits naar Frans? Oké, zeg ik. Hè. Ja. Oké, ik zie dat aankomen. Zeg, ik kwam van Oostenrijk, was over die Google-zaak daar. Dus het was ook al niet evident, maar alleen het zijn totaal andere rechtsbegrippen. Oh, en ik had al gezegd, er is te veel voor mij, ik ga dat met een collega delen. En ze begon moeilijk te doen over de vertrouwelijkheid en dit en dat. En ik zei, maar allee, ik heb ook iemand nodig om mij te reviseren. En sorry, maar ook vooral moet ik zeggen, voor al die opzoekingen. Ik vind dat zo lastig. Dus ik zei tegen die collega's, zoek jij dat maar op. En die moest op het internetforum Oostenrijks recht. En dan een equivalent proberen te vinden. Maar ik had gezegd, je moet het zeggen.
Maar er is ook niet altijd een equivalent, hè, als je een andere rechtspraak hebt.
Parafraseren en proberen uit te leggen wat dat is.
Ik ga even kijken of dat hier nu een beetje gelijk loopt. Ja,
als zij dat heeft, wij gaan willen dat wij dat voorlezen. Hè.
Ik denk dat ook. Ik ga dat nietje eruit doen en gewoon die bladzijden gewoon aflezen. Een beetje meelezen. Maar wat ik eigenlijk al heel veel van plan was, als kijken wat er verder nog op het programma staat. Dus nu komt die professor. Ja. Dus daarmee begint het. En daarna is er een dialoog.
Te denken dat ik mij daarover zorgen maak.
Kroon, dat is in het Frans.
Ga ik doen dan.
En dan explanation of the workshops.
Wat ik onlangs had in het ICC, en ik vond dat ze in feite gelijk hadden, zelfs als wij om het half uur wisselden. Ze waren ook zeer vriendelijk. Het waren de mensen van Soit Belge et toi.
Ja.
Ja. En ze zeiden, en ze hadden gelijk, dat het veel beter voor het publiek zou zijn. Ze dat natuurlijk in 2 talen doen, als ik en mijn collega ook samen zouden tolken, als je ziet wat ik bedoel. Dus ja, en ik deed de man en hij deed de vrouw. Maar dus we waren samen bezig met onze micro tijdens een sketch, hè, want anders is het soms moeilijk. Je hebt zo'n sketch en als het dezelfde persoon die alles tolkt, klinkt dat raar
Ja, nee,
voor de mensen die
wat
dat...
je bedoelt, ja.
Vandaar dat ja.
Ik hoop niet maar dat zijn...
Mondje zeg, als ik denk...
We gaan ervoor.
Ik was braaf met dat ding, dus ik had gewoon een paar woorden in de tekst zelf gedaan, want ik was het dan aan het tolken. Ik zei, nee, ik ga dat niet vertalen, ik ga dat proberen te tolken en zien waar ik moeilijkheden heb en dan vooral al die
Ik denk dat je
citaten
ging
opzoeken.
verschieten. Het is echt niet simpel, die toespraak.
Ja, maar vandaar dat ik had mijn dochter verwittigd. Hè. Dochter die thuis was, ik zei, nee, geen tv, ik moet dat proberen te doen en een paar woorden hier en daar in het Nederlands in mijn teksten. Ik had die gewoon ingelast, ik zei, ja, ik heb geen tijd om dat te vertalen, dus ik tolk dat wel. En ik vond dat ingewikkeld. En op een bepaald moment dacht ik, ben zo moe, ik heb de indruk dat ik dat al heb gelezen. Ja, inderdaad dus. Ik zei dan nog tegen mijn dochter, ik zal beter gaan slapen. En op het einde dacht ik, het moet niet zo moeilijk zijn. Hè. Ik zag epiloog daar en ik dacht, epiloog, niks nieuws zeker, behalve die citaat en de rest. Het zijn ook 2 citaten.
Maar ik heb vannacht bijna niet geslapen, dus ik vond dit gisteravond in mijn mailbox.
Ja, voilà.
Dus ik ben daar dan opgesprongen. Maar ik vond dat eigenlijk erg. Ik vraag al 2 weken van heb je een beetje informatie.
Ik ook.
En dan wanneer c'est très simple, les gens sont très sympas, oké,
Les gens
mooi.
sont très sympas, mais là, dire que c'est très simple.
Maar en dan krijg je om 8 uur s'avonds nog dit. Chance dat ik niets gepland had. Ik was net terug van het oudercontact van mijn kinderen.
Nothing attached. J'ai pas envoyé mon... Ja, die gaat moeten wachten. Hè. Dus zoals gezegd, dacht ik dat ik mijn cv doorgestuurd en ik krijg nothing attached. Ik ga dat hier niet doen. Zo. Wie is dat, Joël? Dat is gewoon
Heb jij een kaartje bij of zo, Katrien?
Ja, ik moet dat hebben.
Dat is wel handig om je gegevens te hebben.
Ja.
Het is vooral tolken dus, hè?
Ja, maar ik wil, als het juridisch is, dan wil ik wel vertalen. Liefst naar het Frans, maar notarisakte of zelf conclusies. Daar wil ik ook wel naar doen. Op een bepaald moment had ik...
Engels, Frans, Servisch, Janko, oké, great.
Janko Bravic.
Italiaans, oké, ja, prachtig.
Het is gewoon aflezen dus nu.
Ja.
Nice.
Alle vertalingen Duits? Ja, oké, schön.
Zit er dan een Duitse vertaler?
Ik denk dat ze naar het Engels luisteren vandaag. Ik heb niemand
Iedereen
gezien.
klaar? Alle vertalingen werken? Dan vragen we, geef het woord even aan Alexis om Henk Opdebeeck in te leiden.
Okay, we give the floor to Alexis to introduce Henkdrik Opdebeeck. I hope you had a nice break and a nice coffee break.
Met een uiteenzetting door professor Henkdrik Opdebeeck.
To close this first part of the day, we will listen to Henkdrik Opdebeeck and then later Sylvain Kroon. Henkdrik Opdebeeck is a professor of philosophy at Antwerp University, works for the Center of Ethics. He wrote several books. For example, Giving Meaning in Economics, about a subject
aan de orde is, de verhouding tussen de reële economie en de ethiek. Hij stelt de persoon met zijn spirituele dimensie centraal en waarschuwt tegelijk voor denkbeelden zoals utopie en dystopie.
He warns for utopia and dystopia in economics.
Door de economie voor de mens en voor
The threatening impact of the economy for mankind and the natural environment. From the very start, Henkdrik Opdebeeck followed the project of the economy of communion and sees it within the framework of the current economic reality. He believes that the big challenge is to move beyond the current movement of transition and put the emphasis on giving meaning.
Henkdrik de kans om dit nader toe te lichten. Welkom op het internationale congres.
Welcome, Professor Opdebeeck, on this congress. We give the floor to Professor Opdebeeck.
Dat iedereen zijn gsm afzet alsjeblieft. Want er blijkt er nog aan te staan en dat je de storingen in de
May I please ask everyone to turn off their cell phones because we're still getting some interference with the signal for the translation, so please do switch off all mobile phones. Thank you for this invitation to think together with you about economic transition today and the role of the economy of communion. It's like a gift for me to be able to be present among friends of the economy of communion, especially today, after hearing what has been said this morning about authenticity and the link with deep spirituality. I will stick to the text that I have prepared in order to respect the timing also for the streaming. Those present here have found a scheme on their chairs. The beginning of my text might be a bit difficult, but we're all still fresh because it's early in the day, so we'll manage. A lot of things go wrong in our economy and call for transition. Think about all the people with burnout, the side effects of the robotization or the climate crisis. Time and again, human beings and their deepest calling tend to be overlooked. A transformation of our economy is required. The ethical framework behind the economy has degraded into a one-sided rational utility ethics, overlooking primarily the crucial question of justice, which our Pope invites us to put forward again. Economic justice. Economic justice comes down to grant the other person the goods that he or she needs in order to survive. In this understanding of justice, one can recognize the pure rational capability to discern the right of every human person to survive. One can also recognize in justice the broader capability to discern which one has to grant the other person the right of survival in order that the human right to survival not becomes a utopia. The personalist philosopher Paul Ricoeur, who died at the beginning of the 21st century, also states this after his starting point, namely that the human person wants to be free and longs to be happy. Ricoeur states that human beings can only reach this goal of happiness in the fullest through the encounter with the other. As human beings, we feel called to give an answer to the invitation or the challenge of others. Like a partner in a company. In this encounter, we recognize the same longing for freedom and happiness in the other, who also wants to be happy. According to Ricoeur, we have to understand this as granting it to the other person, implying that you respect him or her. We know that we can only live a dignified life if we promote the person in us, within us, and in the other. This option implies that I choose to limit myself, understood as not to give in to the natural tendency to objectify everything as means to my goals and fulfillment. This seems to be counter-natural to economics. It is crucial to understand how Ricoeur broadens this intersubjectivity, including the whole world. He argues against an individualistic ethic because human persons are not merely individuals, but they are also grounded within a set of economic structures and institutions. We will return to this later. Traditionally, and the Pope also refers to this, traditionally thinkers use two possible criteria to express this requirement of justice as owing to others the right to survive. The first criterion is purely rational. The latter starts from a broader ethical point of view. Either one focuses on social justice as give to each according to his or her merits, payment according to the hours one has worked, for instance, or one sees justice as giving to each person according to their needs, for instance, receiving an unemployment allowance, because a broader ethical viewpoint requires that people can meet their basic needs. If one focuses on the principle of justice as each according to their merits, then the market gets priority. If, however, one focuses on the principle of justice as each according to their needs, then the state or the government is prior. In the first case, with the market, freedom is more prominent. In the latter, with the government, more collectivity and equality. Focusing too much on the market in society faces us today with the utopia of the free market that in fact results in a dystopia. Just recall the environmental problems and climate change, burnout phenomena, the huge inequalities in income, and the increased call for meaning and purpose in life. Too much government often leads to utopian plans that finally end in dystopia. For example, communism. It's not for nothing that Joseph Amato describes a personalist as someone who, out of respect for the human person, wants to safeguard the human person from both the consequences of extreme individualism and extreme collectivism. That description could also describe the heart of the economy of communion. People in the economy of communion are personalists. Considering the reality and risk of too many utopian and dystopian effects on the one hand, and the failure of the covenant between market and government on the other, we notice that today the citizens themselves take initiatives in society. Think, for instance, about the global initiatives for economic transition, such as the sharing economy, which put the citizen at the center. However, are we talking here about citizens who, in line with personalism, do not merely act as individuals, but as human persons and fulfill their freedom in solidarity with others? Are we talking merely about transition, or really about transformation? Let us investigate this with the personalist Ricoeur again. What does he say? When the citizen, or the free person, in solidarity with others, wants to be happy or content, this is, according to Ricoeur, only possible through appropriate institutions. A third moment, an institution is indeed needed via a neutral term. An institution ensures that the freedom of all can be developed without hurting the others. Ricoeur considers justice as the institutional instrument through which different freedoms are able to live together. That form of justice is also emphasized by the Pope. In other words, we need more than mere economic transition. Today we see how justice as bridging a pure rational economy and a broader economic ethics to avoid both utopia and dystopia is implemented globally in the so-called transition economy. Later we will elaborate, for instance, on the sharing economy, the circular economy, and the happiness economy. We did describe justice as to grant others what they need to survive. Fact is that within the transition economy, exactly this right to survival is central. As a phenomenon globally arising, the transition economy is an economy where not the market nor the government are the primary factors. However, in order to avoid that the transition economy is considered a utopia, we need to question how the idea of giving others what they have, what they are entitled to in order to survive, can be realized effectively and sustainably. Personalism, therefore, dares to question whether we not only need transition, but also transcendence or meaning in general. Only then will we achieve a transformation of the economy. Seen from this perspective of meaning or purpose, one can describe economy as making sense of eliminating scarcity. But in practice, this usually comes down to making as soon as possible 2 euros out of 1. Articulating purpose in economy then means eliminating scarcity of food, money, property and recognition via the market and government. If, however, the current transition of the economy also embraces transcendence, the economy not only makes sense actively, but would also discover and rediscover a deeper meaning. Put differently, receiving sense in the economy would imply for citizens to be open in cooperation with the market and the government for our common scarcity of food, money, property and recognition as human beings. Openness in this process of discovering meaning finally depends on trust. It comes down to being open to the idea that we can be able to trust someone like the Buddha or God, or something like nature or the truth.
Men baat bij dit vertrouwen in een soort liefdesrelatie.
From within this trust, one feels oneself to be in a relationship of love or equality, which in its turn calls for considering really the other person as equal. This is contrary to treating others or the other unequally or going into unfair competition with them out of fear or out of desire. To receive and to be open to this trust expresses itself, for instance, in being open for the uniqueness of nature, or for the wonder one feels, or in the mystical experience of Christ's consolation, or in dwelling in the loving glance of the Buddha. In this way, the contradiction between economy and ethics can be overcome through this transcendent dimension, through this trust. This brings me to the third point, economic transformation, which make things a bit more clear with regard to the economy of communion. If we consider transformation in this way, it is not a utopia. Transformation then becomes an answering in freedom to the socio-economic questions from the perspective of trust. As such, it is the ultimate response to the fidelity and wonder one has received. Transformation as the ultimate giving of answers to the trust we have received. As Dries de Weer puts it, it concerns the profound recognition of the awareness that we are a gift and therefore carry a responsibility. Let us now investigate what characterizes a transformating economy today. Various economic schools and movements express this globally, and let us also bring this into dialogue with the gospel. Some years ago, Piet van Bremen, a highly esteemed Jesuit, published a book with the title Bread Which Has to Be Broken, which could almost be a title for a publication on the economy of communion. You know the expression, the one who does not want to give his life, who does not want to share with others, is lost. This little book refers to one of the most used symbols of community, to break yourself like bread and give yourself away, and as such this title seems to indicate that we will come to know what an economy of communion would actually mean. I take the liberty to interpret the 12th chapter of this book from the perspective of the necessary transformation in the economy, and it's about the story of the rich young man. The man sees Jesus and asks him, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Within the context of the economy of communion, it could be a young student or entrepreneur asking someone like Luigino Bruni or Stefano Zamagni what responsible entrepreneurship means today, seen from a Christian perspective. Jesus answers that question by referring to the commandments. However, he does not sum up all the 10 commandments, but only the 6 commandments of the second table of the Decalogue. You know the commandments: you shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, you shall not defraud, honor your father and mother. When we look at our current economy, which calls for transition, we will see that it is based on 6 commandments, or what we could call presuppositions, to say it with the words of Thomas Kuhn, when what we aim for us and for our society, is an eternal, or let us say sustainable economy or life, as in the case of the rich man. Jesus' answer to the rich man offers us some interesting leads. So let us look at those 6 commandments and those presuppositions. First of all, a responsible economy. A first presupposition of our economy is what we can call its presupposition of dato. To build their theory, economists presuppose several unquestionable convictions. Based on these convictions, they can build several models and take various decisions. One of those convictions is the belief that nature is useful material which we can use accordingly, just like labor which is present within a country, or its technology and the capital that one has access to. These are the different data or building blocks or tools, like in a toolbox, who give rise to our economy. These data, these tools, form a kind of crown or a wreath around the economic happening, from where the economist can pick the elements as he chooses. Due to that toolbox, he does not have to take responsibility for important questions like nature, the quality of labor, technology, or the financial world. You can use them as you wish. From the first lesson in economics, the young economist has these data or materials or these building blocks or these tools at his disposal. Ethical questions belong to the course of ethics, so he or she is being told. It is remarkable that today's social movements, which call for economic transition, originated by putting these materials or building blocks and their consequences into question. Already in the 1970s, global publications such as those of the Club of Rome and the book Small is Beautiful by Schumacher pointed out that we run the risk of destroying our first world, namely nature. Gradually, people started calling for a so-called responsible economy with regard to ecology, labor and technology. With regard to ecology, labor and technology, we as individuals and society as a whole can no longer ignore our responsibility. Nature, labor, technology and our so-called endless needs can no longer be considered as data which can be manipulated by individuals. One discovers that this crown of data contains, in fact, the most important elements that risk to give lead to the development of the economy in a dystopia. A polluted world, labor as merely cost and stress, technology as determining, and endless necessities that undermine our happiness in the long run. From the point of view of transformation, this crown of data mutates into a crown of responsibility, a series of data that no longer can be neglected, but for which you are responsible. So we're talking here about a economy of responsibility, responsible economics. The global focus on corporate social responsibility in economy shows this. One does not only focus on one's responsibility to profit, but also to the people and to the planet. The first commandment that Jesus talks about with the rich young man, namely, thou shalt not kill, confirms this. You will not kill nature nor human beings.
So as an entrepreneur, of course, you can't kill nature, you can't kill human being. We also need a social economy. A second commandment of economy is that the individual is central. The individual client decides whether or not a purchase satisfies his or her needs, whether he or she is satisfied and happy. As a result of the current economic transition movement, is a fact that nowadays the interhuman world rather than the individual becomes central. The satisfaction of fundamental needs such as recognition, self-development becomes more important than the quality of interhuman relationships. But only through a qualitatively personal relationship with other person can you meet the more profound human needs. With a dominant economy focuses on competition, the real satisfaction of human needs required cooperation and solidarity. But we need to translate this into practice. This is more obvious with the so-called cooperative cooperation than with what we see is happening with the sharing economy. While the traditional economy focuses solely on relationship between human beings and things, in the social economy the relationship with the other is primordial. Hence, this perspective in interrelationality offers a way to bridge the gap with our second word with other human persons. And the Gospel, Jesus speaks of the commandment, you shall not commit adultery. Once you become aware of our individualistic economic ego, we can try to avoid to commit economic adultery with other persons, thinking only about our own interest. Third item, a circular economy. Choosing for a more responsible attitude in the economic questions, consequently, the infinity of human needs. The presupposition of the endless human needs clearly has to do with not wanting to recognize the sensible possibility of limiting our needs, instead of increasing them steadily. Through publicity, for example, it has to do with the systematic cultivation of greed and desire, resulting in an increasing gap with the third world in the south. A well-known saying of Mr. Gandhi speaks for itself, saying that it is more than likely that the earth produces enough to satisfy everyone's needs, but not everyone's greed. Just taking into account the environment shows the importance of limiting human needs and of recommending the finiteness of human needs. Hence, we speak about frugal economy instead of our too much affluent economy and satisfied economy. This is illustrated in what is called a circular economy. What is key in economy is to avoid exhausting the natural resources. And the third excess is that it will be possible to see the gap between rich world and south from the perspective of a frugal economy than from that of an average person from the west. Just like the rich young man heard, you shall not be false witness. We economists are called not to be false witness about the real human needs. So, fourth items, an economy of happiness. The systematic dissociation of goals and needs is another presupposition of our economy. There is no space left for a view that in what situation can be chosen as a means, labor or machines for example, because in another situation can be considered as goal in itself. From the perspective of the happiness of human beings, labor as means of self-fulfillment and technologies that does not alienate, for example. This dissociation and separation in the economy between means like labor and technology and the goals, the gates for example, has been more and more criticized because the separation does not do justice to respecting the other person. Respecting the other person as he is can't be reconciled with considering him merely as a means to an end. Child labour, for example. Quite the opposite. One can balance wisely of means and goals, having in mind the happiness of the human persons. And that's what's happening in the happiness economics. So, what we can see, for example, in the United Nations, and when we try to realize over there. So, if we have it again about the gospel of the rich young man, we are incited to keep an eye on this. You shall not steal. What does it mean? You're not going to steal means like child labor, for example, just to get profits by all means, to reach your goal by all means, or for example to give women a minor position in the process. You're not going to steal children or women, for example. The fifth item. Fifth characteristic of the current economic transition is the fact that it relativizes the principle of rationality. So, in the transition economy, the focus lies on authentic needs, such as recognition, or self-development, or respect that through their labors. This focus on authenticity is central in the so-called purpose economy, which constantly looks for the purpose, for the person, for the human being. In the gospel, it says, "You shall not defraud." So we should stop make rational utility our first and exclusive priority. And so, last but not least, an economy of communion. What does this mean? It means that we stop to put price on anything on economy. We try to be more accountable for what's happening and more responsible. The economy is most of the time supported by the market system and property, which are supported by officially accepted structure. For example, a net plane from Brussels to Rome is much cheaper than an ecology, more responsible train ticket with the same destination. This is a typical example of this unacceptable irresponsibility. A responsible transition economy takes a different stance towards the settlement of prices. Even if someone or something does not immediately offer utility, this does not mean that it does not have value, that it is not worth it in the economy. For example, for people with a handicap, for disabled people cannot be considered as costs. Same goes for the nature and human labor. The enterprises of economy of communion want to share with generosity and respect for the human beings with whom they live in the community, as well as nature. They come in the spotlight. The profit of the enterprise for the economic of community goes not only for sustainable investments of company, but is also invested in the search for meaningful work and concrete support for people who live on the margin of our society. The correspondence holds to the commandment, you shall honor your mother and father. Respect your mother and father. Respect the daily work of the stay-at-home mom or dad. Respect your associates. Respect your staff. Respect your colleagues generally. And stop putting just a price label on it. So these are the 5 important characteristics of our economy of communion. To avoid being led to a dystopia. Just like the rich young man who received those 6 commandments from Jesus of Nazareth, we'll give the same answer as he gave Jesus. I have kept all these since my youth. When it appears that the rich man did that ever since his youth, it becomes clearer what he's looking for. What our economy in transition is seeking. And that the economy of communion can give an answer to this. Actually is not asking for commandment of a rich young man. He knows this commandment, but he needs to try to keep to them like we do it. We have a lot of economic commandments that you want to abide, and we take into account stress and economy. But he wants to have an answer for himself. And we need more transcendence. We need something for a specific Christian calling, including our sustainable, our drive to go on with our economy of communion. Jesus, looking at him, loved him. It's verses 21 of Mark. The love of the Father becomes visible in the eyes of Jesus as he looks at his young man with heartfelt sympathy and trust. It is remarkable that these few lines of the expressions can be considered as the turning point. In these lines, the passage refers to the importance of seeing. Jesus looks at the rich young man with love. The love of the Father becomes visible in Jesus. The question becomes whether we are not discovering here our unique Christian calling as entrepreneur. Do we really see the love of our Father? Do we still ourselves be looked upon by the eyes of Jesus, in whom exactly by the love of the Father became visible? Are we comfortable with Christian models, with movements in which one tries to discover the acts of Jesus, or more rightfully put, in which one gets the opportunity to be looked upon by the eyes of Jesus through the confrontation with the poor and the marginalized people? So through Jesus' eyes, as I said. This drive, according to me, is so characteristic for the global enterprises of the economy of communion, who, for instance, systematically share their profit with the most marginalized and poorest people. Jesus looks at the rich young man and says, "You lack one thing. Go, sell what you own and give the money to the poor." The poor people, the refugees among us, all those people who have such a unique way of looking at us. His invitations come from Jesus' love. It is not another commandment, but rather a favor, an appeal referring to the Beatitudes that you will hear on All Saints' Day. So Jesus touches the young man in his weakest point. It is a rich young man. We sometimes also remain lukewarm or bourgeois Christians. We say that we would like to act differently, but we don't do it. So giving a meaning to our life, believing in all this, is it not a utopia? Why is it so difficult? Is my annual contribution to Greenpeace or UNICEF not enough? Do we really have to share from the profits of our company? Wouldn't it be better to reserve that for our family? After Jesus had made an appeal to the rich young man to sell his goods and share his profits with the poor, he was shocked, that rich young man, and he went away grieving, because he had many possessions. Also the apostles were disappointed. Why did Jesus not let them join them first in order to gradually learn from them how to live in poverty? Jesus looks at his disciples and says, how hard it will be for those who have wealth to enter the kingdom of God. For postmodern human beings, the language is very disturbing, because we obviously, without questioning, tend to serve two masters. So we could say like a disciple, who can then be saved? However, it is not tragedy if we as Christians no longer know what to do with our economy, don't see how we really can change it, as we've seen this morning. We don't know how to begin. On a personal level, in our company, we already try to do something to behave as a Christian, but what can we do on a policy-making level, on the international or global level? Well, sometimes when we see the result, we tend to despair. At that moment, we as Christians have the image of Christ on the cross before our eyes. With Jesus, we would like to cry out, my God, why have you forsaken me? My God, why have you forsaken us? Maybe it's only then that we will rediscover the typical Christian aspect of sustainable economic transition. We can't achieve it on our own. Only when we start to see again, as mentioned above, when we start to see, only then we start to see the love and the power of Jesus' cross in the face of the small and poor person. Sustainable economy models of agency could be lived in an evangelical way when we time and again allow ourselves to be looked upon meditatively by the Christ who became man and who is visible in man in the same way as he continues to look at us from the cross with his loving glance. The kind of model required today do not lack ready-made in the poor of human beings, as many as economic transition movements claim, but carried by God. A lot of things are no longer impossible. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Henkdrik Opdebeeck, for this profound analysis. And the image of the rich young man is very appropriate here. The challenge we face is one of transformation that goes beyond the current transition. I guess there are many questions in the audience, so questions can be asked in any question you want. We'll try to offer translation. I will ask the first question myself. I think that today we are facing a number of trends. For example, the transition movement, but also a society which is becoming more and more right-wing and more individualistic. You use the image of the young man who makes an individual choice, but can also be the choice of a company. My question is, do you believe in a transformation movement that is carried by society as a whole? Thank you. Whether I believe in a transformation movement where not only transition with regard with transition from money, a focus on money to a focus on people and values like nature, whether I see this happening on a societal level. Well, I think that the evolution in our society is going in a direction where on the level of institutions we are being confronted with the limits of what these structures lead to. For example, the Trump effect. It's a very good example. We feel that that's no way to be doing politics. When we look at economics being organized on a local level, like Trump wants to do, that there are limits to that. Even in his own party, people are realizing that. So we see on a social level that people become open for other values. But we also find that in, for example, the effect and impact of technology in our society. That is a factor where people are realizing on an ever bigger scale that is this creating a distance to other people. And I think that in that sense that we can say the 21st century in which we are entering fully, that 21st century will be spiritual and transcendent, or it will not be. That is also something, a quote from personalism, and we can find support in that idea, because we are rediscovering what true spirituality actually is. And you could say that, for example, the problems with Islam in our society, fundamentalism, which is sometimes a result of that, is inviting us also on a social level. How can we, with regard to giving meaning, how can we give room to that transcendence? I hope that answers your question. Are there any other questions in the audience? It's a question in French.
Thank you for your intervention. I was really emotionally touched by it. The young rich man leaves grieving, very sad. He's feeling really grieved. So to me the question is, when you have it about transcendence, the economy of communion is an act of faith. So, isn't this act of faith one of the reasons why the economy of communion remains so discreet and so confidential? It's just because it needs an act of faith. So you have it about transcendence. Is it an act of faith, or does it have a broader meaning? To avoid being like the rich young man, feeling grieved and sad. Thank you for your very interesting question. I'm also quite touched by it.
as an economist and philosopher and a Catholic, I never saw any realization of an economy where the image of man is so prominent. I've never seen it so strongly as in the economy of communion. I have many contacts with entrepreneurs and companies. It is of incredible importance that in the economy of communion, that transcendency is translated very explicitly and articulated explicitly as saying yes to the faith that, and trust that God and Christ gives us, and that Christ, the love that Christ sends us from the cross, especially within the context of fundamentalism. As we saw in the movie that with regard to the TV production company earlier this morning, in that context it is very important that we can develop another language at the same time, from an attitude of humility and transcendence. Even in an atheist context, is accepted as an anthropological element, a crucial element of mankind. We all know that our children or grandchildren, so to speak, no longer believe in God, but at the same time they see nature as something sacred. We have to cherish that. We, as people who believe, we know that nature was created by God. The same with regard to the philosopher who might be an atheist, but will speak about wonder. The beginning of any kind of philosophy, really, Western and Eastern. It is important to look in what way we see among our brothers and sisters who are not Catholic. In what way do we recognize the same aspects with them? For example, contact with the Buddhist economy has been, for me personally, a confirmation of the heart of the economy of communion, because they say that the openness for the loving Buddha, for example, who looks at you, is a source to feed compassion within me and stimulate that. So transcendence, preferably in the explicit Catholic meaning. However, let us also be actively pluralist in listening to our brothers and sisters on a global scale to realize that spirituality in the 21st century.
Is it right for you if I ask in English? Okay, good. So, okay, yes. Can I start? Okay. So you put in your presentation strong emphasis on this need of an economic transition.
Je legt sterk de nadruk op economische transitie.
And you acknowledged in the very beginning of your talk that our human economic activity is embedded in institutions.
En je zegt heel sterk dat onze economische activiteit sowieso in instituten verankerd is.
Now, if I look at our project EoC, we have put a very strong emphasis on the meaning, transcendence, ethical and spiritual commitment of the entrepreneurs.
We leggen dus in de gemeenschapseconomie ook hechten ook veel belang aan de spiritualiteit, transcendentie van ondernemers, voor ondernemers.
But maybe we have put less emphasis on the need to change the structure of sin.
Misschien de structure
of sin.
Sin.
Le péché.
Le péché, ja. Maar misschien hecht er te weinig belang aan de notie van de zonde in een economische context.
By the way, this was also the criticism of the sociologist Serge Latouche, who claimed that the economy of communion is not challenging the capitalistic view of
Ja, dat
economy.
was de kritiek van Latouche, dat inderdaad de economie, de gemeenschappelijke economie te weinig de zonden die bedreven worden in de economie aanhaalt of bekijkt of serieus neemt.
Now my question, do you see particular recommendations of, let's say, possible domain layers where the EoC community can take action to change the structures and to transform them into structural grids? So do you see examples where we can act in order to change these institutions?
Zie je mogelijkheden, pistes, invalshoeken om als gemeenschapseconomie ook de instituten, de economische structuur, zeg maar, om die ook te harte te nemen en daar eventueel alternatieven voor uit te werken. Ja, ik denk dat ook de paus in zijn toespraak...
I think that also the Pope in his speech refers to the sins of our economy and calls on us as an economy of communion to see those sins. I think, and I refer back to what I just said, that a possibility might be for the economy of communion to do something about the structure, that we ought to be humble. And I think that is a part of that attitude of being humble, that we are humble enough to step into that structure and there talk to people who look at the economy from another point of view, to recognize ideas in other people and find out what we have in common. What do we have in common? Even with the heavy atheists, we have in common that the care for nature or dealing with burnout are things we have in common, or the idea that child labor should be prohibited. We do have a common basis, and if we create more structural contacts and elaborate our network with people from other ideologies, we will have a bigger chance of changing things on a structural level. I think this is already happening within the economy of communion, but I also think that the combination of openness for what is different in the economy and at the same time cherishing our own deepest spirituality, being open for the love of God, I think that combination is the best combination to answer your concern. Thank you for the questions and answers. We will leave it here. Should there be any further questions, they can still be asked during the lunch break and even afterwards via email, for example. We will now switch to French. For the Dutch-speaking here who want translation, they can take headphones.
Sylvain Cronon has worked for the bank sector and is representing an insurance company. Good morning to all of you. My name is Sylvain. I'm a bank manager and also an insurance broker. So I'm an independent worker. It means that I have the possibility to manage my company just like I want to do it. So and I try to follow the principle of the EoC in my daily work, and also in managing the different areas in my company. I've just taken an associate, Jérôme. He's here today attending the Congress. We share the same values. Actually, he was putting the spirit of the EoC in his work without even realizing he was doing so. Our values are ethics, professionalism, and being open to people, welcoming people, towards everyone, the customers, the staff, the providers. Before starting with the heart of the matter, I would like to focus on the spiritual experience you can have in your own work. If you want to reach God at the end of the day, you need to feel the weight of your labor, as the Benedictine monks say in their rule. The Saint Benedictus, they say that you have to work and to pray among your brothers. When you're working, at some moment you have recognition and joyful moments. Sometimes you have success. You're pleased because you use all your faculties, your abilities and your skills to reach good results. Then we feel better, we have more self-confidence, and it's very important. But this does not mean that managing your labor life is always that easy. Sometimes you can be very disappointed. You have ungrateful customers who treat you like a mere number, or who just want to get rich. Or there are new acts passed that make our life much more difficult and that have no added value whatsoever. Sometimes we have very aggressive competitors. We do not always have the feeling our work is being acknowledged and recognized. Sometimes some of our employees try to take advantage of the company and try not to work too much, and they're more busy with their private matters, like booking their next holiday instead of doing their job. Well, it is really not easy every day. And in about 12 years, I was more than once tempted to stop it. Sometimes life is quite tough and we have a lot of difficulties. But when I'm losing hope, I feel that God is there. And our work that uses a lot of our time and energy, sometimes we have the impression it's too difficult for what we can put on with. But if we go on, we can be thanked for it by God. Sometimes we don't know it happens, but to me I think that when we go on, we have an answer to our prayers, and we can go on actually, because we're never alone. Like Erhard Loretan, an alpinist, was telling to a journalist how he was feeling when arriving on the most complicated mountains, and after reaching his own physical and mental limits. That's what he said. A few reflections and experiences while applying my values of ethic, professionalism and being open to people. Being open to people has a lot of different sides. You have to be welcoming towards your colleagues, to respect your staff, to respect your colleagues. Within a team, you sometimes can see distinction, problems and separation. With my colleagues, we never accepted criticism or people organizing themselves in sort of gangs. One day we heard that one person, that the cleaning persons was being criticized because she was smelling. She forgot some tasks she had to perform, and they said she was quite stupid. And we said she was just as important that any other worker in the bank, any other employee. Of course, we are aware of the fact that person is not perfect, but we have to respect her, and we highlighted how kind she was, and we also told our employees that you never can let someone leave if they're not happier than when they enter your company. It's Mother Teresa that said it. When you have a newcomer, sometimes there's some fears and criticism. A few months ago, we recruited a new employee for our insurance sector, and some other employees did not like him and talked ill about him. We immediately reacted with my associates to repeat the kind of spirit we want to have in our offices, and we put an end to that calumny. A few times later, we noticed that two people that had problems together enjoyed playing games, and I just proposed that they'd play together to prepare team building. That way they were able to discover each other, and well, thanks to that they go on well together now. During the team building activity, we also proposed each employee to highlight a quality they noticed in each of their colleagues. Thanks to that, we can have a very positive setting in our company. To be professional, you have to be impartial, and to give the best solution to the client, you cannot judge them. We know them in their intimity. Sometimes we do not agree with their choices, but by having sympathy, we can give them the right advice without trying to sell them the product that will give us more money. In our insurance bureau, we have less contracts, but we have a better growth because we have a good customer loyalty. It's not always easy not to judge people. To give you an example, one day customers looked like ethic was key in their life, and I had a feeling we were on the same wavelength, and I thought they wanted to cooperate with me to buy a new house. A few days later, I felt quite hurt when they told me they changed their mind, because one of my competitors made a more interesting offer, well, a cheaper one. But you also have some person that can be stricter in their life, or with whom we have less affinity, or we think so, by the way, but who are touched because we invest a lot of time with them, and who agree with our values and our work. Relationships are not only based on profitability, but also on a trust relation, trying to invest on both sides in that relationship to give the best of ourselves. A working relation is much more than price setting or a contract. Another example, a customer had a terrible sort of accident. She had a problem with a chimney, and her house caught fire because of this. If it had happened during the night, the whole family would have died. The customer had reparation for 19,000 euro, but by defending her, we were able to get 42,000 euro for her reparation. But she also wanted to prosecute the heating company, because she said he was dangerous for other customers. We tried to talk to her and to say that we could understand that she was angry, but everyone can make a mistake. And she had an insurance in judicial protection, and that covered the damages, but not the prosecution costs. So she left us because we did not want to prosecute the heating company. So, you know, when there is a personal feeling, because we had a relation with our customers, we need to feel that our values are worth living them. And yes, it's worth it. We do it because for us it's the only possible path to take, the only true and real path. Let's come back to that lady. We never regretted the fact that we spent a lot of time with her, that we went to help her in a weekend, that we were there for her because it was our job and we just did our job. But it takes time, and it can be a good thing if we want a more ethical society. And we have a lot of positive feedback and people that like us, that are loyal to us. And if that it exists, it's because we do apply our values. Some customers left us and came back because they missed our service and the relation we had with them. This acts as an incentive for us. And one responsible person for the bank or the insurance to represent come and see us. It was quite reassuring to hear the head of the bank telling us she did not know why, but the people enjoyed working with us and cooperating with us. So sharing and to have a gift culture according to the EoC, well, we need to have a heart. We sponsor Together for Peace, to be very practical, or we also have a youth project of young people wanting to live in peace and for universal fraternity. We also send medical equipment to Kinshasa and so on. And our company, we also live that with the company. When I bought the company, they received a legal berima. Since then, we were able to increase their wage every year and to give them extra advantages like those dinner vouchers or extra insurance or a bonus. So last year each of them got a €2,000 bonus. In this spirit and with our invisible associates, we managed to progress of 126% of active customers. We doubled our staff and we doubled our gains. Thank you for your attention. Die had ook een document, maar die heeft hij niet meegegeven. Enfin, ik had die niet nodig. Hè. Die was wel traag. Dus.
Merci, Sylvain.
Thank you, Sylvain. Thank you. I think that after his presentation, we just had a very practical example. It's very interesting. We have a last moment together before stopping, and I think that Frank is the person responsible for that moment. He's going to present as the Cube Company.
Now and then, we also play games within the economy of communion. So a small technical intervention. So we'll now be presented with the company cube. Hello, it is my honor to speak just before lunch. That's always very interesting. Everybody wants to go for lunch. But I'll try to have your attention. I'll be talking about the company cube. I'll shortly explain how I got there. There is a company in the United States in the economy of communion, and they give consultancy to companies. And that's how we found out that the company cube exists. It's a small cube with 8 sides, and each of that should be 6 sides, I believe. So 6 sides, not 8. Everyone is still awake, alive and kicking. I started talking to the people or about the company cube. I'm a financial controller in my company. I was looking for a tool to combine hard skills of financial training with soft skills of dealing with people, and that's where the company cube came in. I'll give a short introduction to you with regard to the company cube. Later on, it's your time to do some work. I'll first show the film.
Jullie niet bekommeren, het is in het Engels, maar het is heel snel en jullie begrijpen de beelden.
So, for the people in the audience, don't worry. The film is in English, but it's rather easy, so you won't need translation.
The Company Cube is a new cooperative strategy for small business success. Its objective is to bring about enterprise transformation and social change through person-centered daily decision-making. How does it work? Simply pick up the cube and roll it. Whichever side lands facing up is read and then put into practice during work that day. At the end of the day, think about how your behavior was changed by that side of the cube and share it with someone. It's that simple. Roll it, read it, live it, share it, and then experience the amazing results. The Company Cube is based on a collective business lifestyle adopted by over 800 small businesses worldwide belonging to the Economy of Communion project. For more information, go to thecompanycube.org.
Jullie zijn geweldig enthousiast geworden.
No doubt this film made you very enthusiastic.
Dus waar gaat het over eigenlijk?
So what is it about? The Company Cube is a tool
Waar we een discussie mee kunnen starten.
to start a debate or organize a workshop.
Een van de zijden.
One of the sides of the cube says build relationships every day. So every day, I'll give a simple example. Sometimes I position myself at the entrance of our company building, and I tell them I wish you a nice day today. And then people look at me wondering what's happening, and I repeat, yes, I wish you a nice day. And then so it creates an opportunity to talk. It builds a relationship every day.
We hebben share
Another side says share expertise, time yourself.
voorbeeld in even waarbij dat je
I think we can all think of examples where we think,
die komt weer aan eens iets vragen.
oh, that one again, always having questions. Another side of the cube says
First to help
first to help
others.
others.
Proberen toch eerst anderen te helpen.
Try to help others first.
Support with actions.
Fourth side of the cube says support with actions, not just words. So make sure that you are there when people need you.
Value every person.
Then there's a side of the cube that says value every person, every idea.
Zeker voor een firma 3F, innovation.
I think that
Als je naar innovatie wilt, moet je
it's definitely important with regard to openness and innovation. For example, maybe the weirdest ideas can lead to innovative solutions.
competitors can be friends.
One side of the cube also says competitors can be friends too. When I introduced the company cube to my boss, he he laughed at that, but I explained it to him. Within a company, we're all in some sort of picking order, and colleagues are also competitors in a way.
In de maand dat je hun helpt om hun job goed te doen, komen zij beter uit hun job.
The more I help them, the more they will achieve better results.
Ik begrijp een beetje beter wat je competitors doen.
So that was what
Heel veel.
that's one way to understand the word competitors.
Daar moet je zeker elkaar helpen, want anders.
I have a background in sports, and that's you also need to help each other there in order to make a good team. So what are we going to do? We're going to roll the
We hebben de company
cube,
en het
the
zal
company cube.
die rollen en dat we dan op
So
de
our,
zijde dan
the intention is to roll the dice, to roll the company cube, and based on what side comes up, we will start the discussion, start the debate. What I usually do is I let everyone think about the, for example, the sentence first to help others. Have I ever done that? Have I ever helped other people? In what conditions? And then we share those experiences.
Ik denk dat die nu moet gerold worden, die cube.
So I think we can now
Wie wil
roll the cube.
kandidaat stellen om
Who's a candidate to do that?
ik zal hem in de
Volunteer. I will throw it in the room, and whoever catches it will
Wie dacht ik tussen
roll it. So there it goes,
Share.
and it landed on the side of that says share expertise, time yourself. Share expertise, share time, and share yourself. That is.
Dat kan geen betere uitnodiging zijn met al de expertise die uit heel Europa en de rest van de wereld.
That's a great invitation with all this expertise we have here. So that can't be too difficult. Thank you, Frank. So we know what we can do later on this afternoon.
Daarmee sluiten we onze voormiddag af.
That's the end of the first part of today.
Enkele kleine praktische
Some practical information for you
om het programma verder in
to complete the program this afternoon and tomorrow.
van jullie
As some of you may have seen already,
de zaal, bladen met de titels
outside this room there are sheets of paper with the titles of the
No, perché la Serbia ha chiesto il testo
Sì, sì.
e non solo la Serbia, perché sarebbe bene almeno sapere.
Yes.
E finalmente così no, tu dici tante cose belle che nessuno capisce.